Hello everybody, good morning. So I don't have a lot of time. I'm about to head out. I overslept this morning. I really needed that sleep, so I think I got about 7 hours. I was supposed to get like 5.5. I was like, bump that, I need some sleep. But I made a video yesterday talking about parents and how sometimes, sometimes out of love we do the extra, we do the most. We don't mean to all the time, but we have to be mindful that children are separate from us. They're not us. They're not like an extension of us, but they're separate from us. And I wanted to talk about hypocrisy, being a hypocrite while raising your children. Trust me, we all do it. So you know how that saying goes, do what I say, not what I do, right? That is such a horrible thing to raise your children on, because the children need role models. They need to see, what exactly am I supposed to do? If you're giving me the blueprint, I need a blueprint. Your words are not your blueprint. Your actions are your blueprint to your children's future. So my father, God bless the dead, he abused me. I grew up in a house of violence, extreme violence, right? So to express himself, he would hit us, and he would hit us, really viciously. So the last beating was when he almost beat my sister to death, the one that passed away from an overdose. He beat her almost to death. So I told my sister, I said, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. We cannot live here. He's going to unalive us if we stay here. And she agreed. So we went to my aunt, and my aunt went and got the authorities, and that was the last time we was at that house for about 2 years. So I was placed in a group home for 2 years, and my brothers and sisters were placed in foster care. But anyways, I say that to say this. When I was growing up, my father always told me, never be a follower, always be a leader. And he would always ask me when I would come home, did you let anybody bully you? Did you let anybody hit you? Did you, always trying to make sure. There was a couple of times where we was letting people mess with us, but we wasn't finna tell him, because my father was a psychopath. He would come outside, and in Trinidad we used the thing called the cutlass, but it's called a machete, I guess, in the United States, but we call it a cutlass, and it's this long knife that you chop trees down with. So my father kept the knife on deck, and he would bring it outside to threaten the kids in the neighborhood. He'd be like, you better leave my kids alone. So he told us, always be a leader, not a follower. The problem with that message that my father told me is, you telling me not to let anybody abuse me. You telling me not to let anybody lay hands on me and always stand up for yourself. But then you beating the crap out of me. Now, I understand you discipline your child. I get it, right? You tell your children, hey, I still got to discipline you. But when it's to the point where you're hurting me and abusing me, and then you telling me I can't stand up for myself, it doesn't match your teaching. It doesn't match the discipline that you're sending me, because you are the abuser. So you telling me don't let anybody hurt you, but then you're hurting me? You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like a woman in domestic violence when the guy goes, well, if I can't have you, nobody can. And I know women say it to men too, because you got some crazy ones out there that will unalive the dude if they think he about to leave them. So those words came back to bite my father in the ass, because I was the daughter that told the authorities what he was doing. And my sister too. My sister was always the one trying to tell the people, but they wouldn't believe her. But then when I decided to help this time, I was like, no, this time I'm going to tell, because I'm not afraid anymore. I was about 11 or 12. I think I was 11 when I first told the authorities about the abuse, and we got taken out of the home. And it took everything in me to not be scared of my dad, because I was like, what if they don't believe us, right? But that time when he beat her so bad that he almost unalived her, I knew it was time for me to do something to help my sister. So my point is this. Even though I finally listened to what my father said about standing up for myself, as I got older, it took a long time for me to come out of my shell. Even though I'm an extrovert now, I always thought I was an introvert growing up because my father stifled my creativity. He stifled me from coming out of my shell, talking to people. When we would go outside in public, he would always tell us to stop looking at people, don't talk to people. We weren't allowed to have conversations with people. It was just like this weird cult. It was 7 of us that my father had, and it was like this weird cult. I was the second oldest. The one that passed was the oldest, so I am now the oldest. But he used to have us walk in a military line behind him when we would go out and about in public. And I remember people would come up to him and be like, your kids are so well-mannered. What did you do? How do you do it? And in the back of our mind, we're like, why don't you tell us to blink twice if we need help? Like, help, get us out of here, right? But these people are admiring what's going on, but they're not knowing behind closed doors, it was the house of horror. So my point is, luckily, the God that's in me gave me the strength to say, you know what? Let's get out of here and let's help our brothers and sisters before he unalived them. Because I was afraid they were only going to take some of us out the house and not all. But they took all of us that same night. They came and knocked on the door and was like, we getting these kids up out of here. Now, parents, when you're doing things that are hypocritical, it confuses the child. It gives them cognitive dissonance. So what you're doing is you're telling them that it's okay to preach one thing and do another. So yes, they will listen to what you're saying. They will follow what you're saying, but they will also follow what you're doing. So it's going to be both. So you're going to have them operating out of cognitive dissonance. For example, if you tell your daughter you can't date, but then you have a bunch of guys coming over or a bunch of women coming to your house, she's going to tell you that she's not going to date. She may respect that to a point where she don't bring the boy over to the house, but then that might cause her to go and sleep in somebody's alleyway or somebody's hotel room without the class level of it, if that makes sense. Because they're trying to honor what you're saying, but they're also following the example you're setting. And then you get mad at the child and say, well, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And it's like, but look around you. Look at what they have to emulate. And then another thing is you got to be a little bit empathetic to what your children, the pressure that they got to go through, the social pressure. Understanding when we were young, we had to live up to social pressure. And it's even worse now because everybody's being raised by the internet. So now you got all these things going on the internet, confusing the poor kids. I mean, the promiscuity levels have increased as far as being acceptable. Back in our time, if you did some old shady stuff, you better hide it because everybody gonna talk about you in the neighborhood. But now it's like it's acceptable to be a thot or to be a whore or to be a fuckboy, they call them. It's like preferred. No one wants relationships anymore. You see what I'm saying? And when I say no one, just remember I'm making generalized statements. It is not saying everybody, because my children, they want to be married. Hold on, I'm just putting in my just checking my clock. I got 5 minutes left. This is gonna be a short video because I do gotta go. So what I'm trying to say is, instead of tearing your children down, there's something called emotional intelligence. Shout out to the subscriber Kim. I don't remember your whole title, but I know the first part of your name is Kim. She leaves comments and she's very insightful. One of the things that Kim mentioned was children are lacking emotional intelligence these days. And that is a very powerful statement. You have to teach your children emotional intelligence. There is something called the amygdala that is on the frontal cortex of the brain. That controls emotions. It controls fear, anxiety, but it also regulates it. When the amygdala is compromised, meaning either they're not tapping into it properly, maybe they have some level of dysfunction, like some type of disease like Alzheimer's or something, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the average everyday child. You have to teach them how to regulate their amygdala. That is their emotional brain. We keep targeting our children's logical brain. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the brain that operates the IQ. I forgot what that's called. It's the limbic. It's the limbic. The limbic operates the emotion. I forgot the other one. The one that operates the logic. For you scientists and, you know, well-educated people, y'all can put it in my comments just to remind me. But We target our children's intellect too much. When we send them to school, you pound them. Did you get good grades? Did you pass that test I told you? Did you study for your exam? And he's like, yes, Ma, I got the A that you asked. Yes, Ma, I got the B that you told me. You know what I mean? No, Ma, I got a D. Why did you get a D? Meanwhile, he just got a beating last night. He just got the flesh beat off of him last night by his dad or his mom, or he got beat up in school, so he couldn't concentrate. He has nobody to talk to about how he got beat up, but yet you worrying about his D grade, and you're not realizing he's mentally and emotionally in turmoil, and it's affecting how he studies or how she studies. This is how you have to be when you created a whole life. This whole life is a whole person, it's a whole being that has emotions, not just a robot you program and you say, I'm going to instill this into you whether you like it or not. No, your children is customized to their needs. If you notice, if people that have more than one child, or if they have like nephews or nieces, or they just be around children, no two children are really alike. Even twins be different. You see what I'm saying? That's the uniqueness of our Creator. It's like everybody is unique in their own way. Like my sister, she looks just like me, but we act nothing alike. You see what I'm saying? But we get along when we come to certain topics, but we don't really think the same. So my point is, customize your children's needs according to that each specific child. If you got like two children, customize. You're not going to be able to treat both children the same. Try not to favor one over the other, but tap into each individual's creative ideas and things like that. Find out what they like. Find out what they don't like. Sit down and talk to your children. You owe them that much as a conversation, because when they were little, when they were between the age of 1 and 5, you spent all day, every day with them. You found out what they didn't like to eat, what got on their nerves, but then as soon as they turn 10 or 11, they on their social media and their phone with their friends. You're not asking those questions anymore. You don't give a damn. Not saying you don't give a damn, but you're not as invested because you feel like, okay, now the school is raising them. They're at their friend's house. I don't need to be invested. No, that's the time you need to be more invested. You need to be a bugaboo. It might get on their nerves a little bit, but when shit hit the fan and they really need to talk to you about some shit, they're going to be like, I remember Ma was always in my corner, always asking me if everything was okay. You ever see those shows, Lifetime movies? I know men don't watch it, but women. Y'all ever see those Lifetime movies where it be a teenager, they grew up in a good home, everybody seemed like they love each other, but the teenager get into some shit at school and she never tells the parent. She's deathly afraid to tell the parent. And you're like, but this mom, she seems pretty cool. She's a soccer mom. You know, she seems like she's invested in her children. Why isn't the child feeling comfortable to talk to this parent? It's because you have only tapped into the logical side of your child. You give them rules and regulations, but you're not comforting them. You're not emotionally supporting them. You're not tapping into their amygdala, the amygdala side of their brain. You have to teach your children how to understand the compartmentalizations of their brain and why they feel certain things, why they get upset, why they feel socially awkward. You got to sit and talk with them and understand these things. Don't just ask them, hey, did you make a friend today? And they say, oh, not really. And you're like, oh, how come? Oh, I just didn't feel like it. That's not a real conversation. That's just two words being said, and then you tell them go to their room. You got to sit and talk with your children. Understand what type of people are you attracted to. When you go to class, who do you sit next to? Do you sit in the front of the class? Do you sit in the back of the class? I know it's annoying. I know. But this is what you have to do. This is how I got to my kids. When they were little, I asked them, they were like, Ma, stop asking so many questions. But guess what? They tell me shit now. They tell me shit now. They may not tell me everything under the sun, but they talk. They'll tell me what the hell's going on with their love life, with their dad, whatever. Even the dad will call me and say, Carmen, can you please talk to your son? Because I want to ask him some questions, but he's not talking to me. He's not like telling me what's on his mind. I'm like, all right, I'll call him later. And I'll call my son, and my son will talk to me. He will tell me exactly what he's feeling. Now, me and my son wasn't always super close, but I did instill the bond in him to always feel comfortable emotionally expressing himself, if that makes sense. Even though I was a pain in the butt on other things, one of the things that I definitely bonded and instilled in my kids was that emotional support. You got to be emotionally supportive and tapping into their emotional intelligence, explaining to them what that looks like, how you can explain to them how to, I know I don't got a lot of time, I got about 4 minutes left. How you can explain emotional intelligence to your child is get them to start understanding that their words affect other people's feelings, and that they have to start understanding how to read body language. Explain to them body language. Let's say we go to the store. Let's say we go to like a grocery store, and you go to like a Walmart or something, and you get online. You could tell them, like, you're going to do an experiment. You could tell them things like, watch how I speak to the cashier and watch her body language. And then you tell me when we get out the store what you saw. So what you could do is you could pipe up the cashier, say something really nice to them, like, "Ooh, that's a nice lipstick. Oh, that's a nice shirt you got on. How you doing today, girl? I know these people get on your nerves. I'm gonna try to make it quick and get the hell out your way," or something like that. Make them laugh, right? And see how the cashier reacts to you. She could have been calm and just really like, next. But then when you came along and you gave her that energy, you fed into her amygdala. Now her amygdala brain is registering, ooh, somebody's talking to me that actually cares. Because sometimes it's just about you seeing that person. You'll have a good conversation. Like a lot of the Walmart people, I end up having conversations with them about like where they're from. Some of them be like, "Oh, I just moved from New York down here to Georgia." And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm from New York. I could tell you got the New York swag to you," right? And we just have a good conversation. And my brother used to work at one of the Walmarts back in a couple years ago. So I would tell them things like, I can understand how working here and stuff like that. Just conversation, basically. And I remember my kids would always tell me, "Ma, you talk to everybody." And I was like, and then this one girl, she's new at the company that I'm with now. And I came up to her and I said, "Hey, I know you don't know me, but I could tell you're new by the way you're inspecting the truck. If you need any help, you can reach out to me. If you want me to give you my number, I can give you my number." She looked like, "What?" So she literally called me that same day to ask me a question about the logs, how to do the logs. And then she was like, "You really nice for a New Yorker." I was like, I guess. And she was like, I didn't think you was a New Yorker because you're real nice. And I'm like, girl, if only you knew, I ain't always nice. But my thing is, I lost my train of thought. I be drifting off. I'm sorry, y'all. And it's early in the morning. And as y'all see, I haven't been sipping on the coffee because I was trying to stay focused. But my point is this. Invest in your kids now. Don't wait till it's too late. Don't act like it is too late. Even if your kids might be bitter, they might be having some emotional turbulence, whatever. Work through it. Work through the emotional turbulence. And I'm going to keep making videos about this here and there, right? Because I'm coming to you as a person that has been an abused child who understands the dynamics of raising children in an abusive home, coming out of abuse, and being a mom that had to deal with emotional turmoil and not being the best to my kids, but restructuring that and rebuilding it for me and my children, for all three of my children. All three of my children, I have had challenges with each of them because of my parenting style when I was younger. And I had to come to the Jesus moment, like, okay, we need to fix this dynamics of what's happening. And I didn't have the answers back then. I just knew something was off with the way I was raising my kids. And I just was like, I started reading books. I started watching YouTube videos. And then I started the healing on my own self because I didn't understand what I was going through. Because when I was raised by my father, who was a hypocrite, he was a preacher by day and a crackhead by night. It's a hard dynamic to be raised by someone so hypocritical, like from the exact extremes of it, right? So I was like, who am I? I didn't know who I was. I'm like, Do I like this? I didn't even know what my likes and dislikes was. When you do stuff like that to your children, you train them to be a victim to abusers. Because if they don't have no self-efficacy, no individuation, they're just an open vessel for a abuser to come and pour into them what they need to train them to become a victim. Because they're empty inside. If your child is empty inside and you allow that to keep happening and festering, don't be surprised when they bring home a Tyrone or a Bonquisha. Look, I'm not saying anything wrong with ghetto people. Don't be surprised when they bring home somebody that has no goals, no morals, just a hot stinking mess. Don't be surprised, because you haven't trained them. Even though you might talk a good talk, they're not seeing, they're not believing you. You need to make your kids believe you. You see what I'm saying? All that talk, they don't want to hear that talk. They want to see, what is mommy and daddy doing that is any different than what I could do? Oh, so they work a little 9-to-5 job. Whoop-de-fucking-do. I'm not impressed. What are they doing that's any more insightful or inspirational to my life? And how you become inspirational to your children's lives is you have to pour into them emotional intelligence. Show them how to have willpower. I'm gonna have to make another video on that. You gotta teach your children willpower, the power of controlling their impulses. There's a test you can do when they're young to see how strong their willpower is, but it's not like a test that's going to determine their success. However, there are certain children traits that shows they can be obsessive. They call it addictive behaviors. A lot of boys tend to have addictive behaviors, like they get addicted to like drugs, addicted to cigarettes, addicted to video games. If your child has an addictive behavior, you're going to see it from young. It's called a temperament. If their temperament is very short fused and they can't control the impulse and they have aggression, that means you have to pay more attention to that child over the mild tempered child. Now when I say more attention, don't make me, I don't want you to think I'm saying make them like a favorite or something. You just have to train that child a little bit different than the child that is going to follow rules naturally. So I'm gonna make another video where I'm gonna discuss the different traits in children that you can catch young, that you don't pick on that child. Like certain children have a short fused temperament. It's called a temperament. They're born with that. It's hereditary. My son had a bad temperament, and I'll talk about that another time. I didn't know what it was. So what parents tend to do is they beat the child, or they yell at the child, or they feel that, and oh, you know who's a good story to talk about the temperament? Serena Williams. She talks about her temperament. And hopefully I remember in my next video to talk about what she was saying, how her dad was strict on her because of her temperament. But psychologists say the way the dad did it wasn't that bad. It was actually kind of good, but he didn't understand like the deep psychological, like you have to have a limit. If you are too strict to the temperament child, if you're too strict on them, they will rebel and do exactly what you don't want them to do. So you have to have a fine line on how severely you punish them. But you do have to put a little extra discipline on the short fused child. It's called a temperament, right? You have to see the differences in your children and understand how to raise them, because each child is different. It's so different. Like all three of my children have unique personalities, so I have to deal with each one of them differently, but I still have to love them the same. Anyways, I do gotta go. Love y'all much. Thank y'all. And I'm gonna read y'all comments later, okay? Talk to you later. Bye.